It's identifying opportunities in AI and big data. So we have a very interesting panel here today. The webinar is to educate and disseminate the technological potential of big data analytics, especially in the marine training safety centers and startups participating in the AT Virtual project. It's my pleasure to introduce the lead partner of AT Virtual, and that is Roberto.
Thank you very much, Michael, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you in this seminar about big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and so on. So I'd like to start this webinar with a brief introduction of the AT Virtual project. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to all of you for your attendance to this webinar and this session. Of course, I'd be glad that you find it interesting and enjoy it. Okay, so of course, I want to thank as well the CorkBIC, which is also a partner of the AT Virtual project, for organizing this session. Okay. So I'm going to introduce briefly what is the mission of our AT Virtual project to all of you. So basically, what we try to do is to develop a specific methodology based on open innovation to increase effectively and efficiently security and safety in maritime conditions within the Atlantic space. So in the following slides, I'm going to explain you how are we going to achieve this particular goal. And it's important to mention as well that this project is funded by the Interreg Atlantic Space, which is a European funding program that promotes transnational collaboration among the 36 regions that belong to this territorial scope. And in the case of the AT Virtual project, the regions represented are País de la Loire in France, Central and Lisboa in Portugal, Southern and Eastern in Ireland, and Basque Country and Asturias in Spain. So the project was initiated 2 years ago, more or less, in January 2019, and it's expected to end in December 2022. Okay, so going deeper, okay, in their mission of the AT Virtual project, we are trying to achieve this particular goal by accelerating the digitalization process of the Maritime Safety Training Center. So probably most of you are now wondering what Maritime Safety Training Center is. So let's say that they are basically public institutions, most of them, that could have different legal forms. For example, they could be, or they could belong to the Navy, they could be universities, they could belong to national ministries, but all of them have one specific mission as well, which is to train elite staff teams that are going to perform risk operations in maritime conditions. So we are talking about the firefighting procedures, we're talking about rescue operations. So this digitalization process will allow the centers to introduce solutions in the field of the Internet of Things, big data analytics and vision technologies in simulation-based training systems in collaboration with startups in the methodology of open innovation. Okay. These startups, of course, will act as digital enablers, okay, for the centers. To make it possible, we count on the participation in our consortium of different profiles, entities, of course. Maritime Safety Training Centers, they are the key actors of the project, since they are going to be involved in every stage, okay, of the project, in the diagnosis, in the selection process of the startups, and also in the definition and implementation of the solutions. So in our case, we count on the Jovellanos Center, belonging to the Sociedad de Salvamento y Seguridad Maritime in Asturias, in Spain, the Master Technological University from Cork Island, and the Escola Superior Náutica Infante Don Enrique from Lisboa, Portugal. The business innovation centers are also very important since they are going to act as national contact points for the calls and the different events. Okay, they have to encourage their community of startups to participate in the project, specifically in the calls. So in our case, we have 4 BICs in the consortium. CEI Asturias is the lead partner. IPN in Portugal, Laval Mayen Technopole in France, and CorkBIC in Cork Island. And last but not least, also we count on the participation of the Tecnalia Foundation, which is one of the largest research institutions in Europe. In this case, with a very specific profile, which is to carry out the diagnosis stage of the maritime safety training centers and also assist them in the definition and implementation and also the assessment of the proposals that they're going to receive for their challenges. Okay? So I'm going to explain quickly what are the most important phases of this project, this 80 virtual project. So the first one is the diagnosis. We need to know what is the maturity, what is the level of the digitalization of the centers. We need to know what is their needs, where are the processes in which the introduction of these technologies probably could make a difference for them. Okay, so the final outcome of this phase will be the challenges. Okay, the challenges that are going to be included in the different calls, in the current things, in the big data analytics, and also in the vision technology, which is the topics, the digital topics that this project are going to work on. Okay. The next one is the selection process. The selections is a very, let's say, wide stage or large stage that involves the launching of the goals, but also the process about the receiving the proposals, the validation, the assessment, the pre-selection and selection of the final solutions, in this case by the Maritime sector. So for this particular purpose, we've developed a platform in which we can carry out the whole process. Okay? And the last stage will be the implementation of the solutions. Once the pairings or the teams between the startups and the Maritime Safety Training Center have been completed. Also, the project will provide them tools, specific tools to speed up the process. Okay? Based on agile methodologies and also webinars like this one, so that they can, of course, make the process efficient. Okay. So at this particular point, I'd like to call your attention specifically for the startups that probably are watching this session, that probably could have expertise, technologies, and of course, knowledge in the big data analytics field. Okay, because we have the second call of the project based on these digital topics is still open. Okay, so I encourage you to participate, to check all the information about the challenges, and of course, I'm going to explain you now briefly how to reach and how to check all this information. Okay. So the first thing that you have to do is to go to our website. Okay, this is the address of our website is www.at-virtual.eu. Okay, so you'll get access to our homepage, and as you can see in the image, there's a specific section dedicated to the course. Okay, so clicking on it, you'll have to, you can see all the information about the call that is now open. Okay, you'll have to click on this plus button to see the definition or the challenges that are going or are included in this call. Okay, all of them in the big data analytics data. Okay. for example, if you want to check or see the challenge proposed by NIT, you'll have to click on more info, and you can read or all the information about the context and definition of the problem, the challenges, the description, the requirements, the expected outcomes, and all this information could be downloaded, okay, in PDF. And also, in order to give you or to provide you more information about this description of the challenge, a week ago we organized and we celebrated an info day to explain, okay, in a very detailed way, how to apply, how to participate in this course, and also for the explanations of these challenges by every maritime safety training center. All this information as well is available on our website, okay, in the events section. Info Day is the name of this event. And you can see the whole video of the session, and also you can download as well the presentations of the Maritime Safety Training Center. So if you are willing to participate, I recommend checking all this information. Okay. So who can participate? They have to be companies, okay? Let's see that there are 3 specific requirements that you have to fulfill. One of them is related to the size of the company. They must, the participants or applicants must be SMEs, okay, as maximum size, according to the European Union definition, okay? So of course, small companies and micro companies are willing to participate, okay? They are available, they are eligible to participate. Sorry. The origin is also important. They have to belong, they have to be established in one of the regions belonging to the Atlantic space area. And also the date incorporation is important because they must be, or they must prove that the date of incorporation is after January 1st, 2010, okay? So how to submit a proposal? You also have to go to our website in the call section. And I think that before going to one or specific challenge, I really recommend, okay, reading the terms of reference of the call, because you can find all the information not only about how to submit properly a solution, but also the selection process that you have to bear in mind if you want to prepare a very good proposal, and also, of course, the assessment area, okay? So once read it, you'll go for one of the challenges that probably you could be interested in. For example, the Centro Jovellanos, clicking on more info and going down at the bottom of the challenge description, you'll find this button application in which you'll have to fill out this application form about contact information about the company. But also there are 3 specific documents or documentations that are very, very important, okay? So the first one is the memory about the solution proposed, whose template you can also download through our website. All the legal documentation to prove the 3 eligibility criteria that all the applicants must fulfill. And after agree our privacy policy, you'll be able to submit the your application, your proposal, okay? So also I call your attention about the deadline, okay? So the deadline is October 20th at 5 p.m. Central European summertime, okay? So it'll be 4 p.m. in Irish time, okay? So the criteria for the eligibility, of course, all the applicants must fulfill all the eligibility conditions. All the information must be readable, accessible, and printable. The memory, that I think for the startups from Ireland is a very good advantage, must be in English and not exceed 10 pages, the memory I mean. So they also have to include the budget for the services, for the implementation of the solutions. So this budget must be less than 15,000 euros. And this is very important, okay, to respect this amount of money. And additionally, in other contents of the memory, you'll be requested to list what is the hardware necessary for the implementation of the solution, and taking into account the value for money, the best quality of this hardware at minimum investment. In any case, the startups will be the providers of this equipment, okay? So you are going to only be providers for the services of the implementation. And the last condition that also you have to fulfill is that one applicant can just submit one proposal to each challenge. You can propose a solution for every challenge, but just one, okay? So why to participate? I think is a very good opportunity for the startups, specifically in Ireland, of course. I think that the way of the participation of the startups is quite agile, okay? So you only have to invoice the Maritime Safety Training Center for your services. So I think is a very good opportunity for the startups as well to get notoriety, because I think that you can add another successful case to your portfolio and start, okay, your introduction in a very promising industry, which is the maritime industry, specifically in the digitalization scope.
Roberto, thank you. And what we'll do, I think, because there's a lot of very good things here, we will send a detailed copy of this to all of the people in the audience. We have their email details, and I think you've covered some of the really good points here, and in particular, why do it, which is something we'll explore a little bit further through the presentations and panel in the next hour plus. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving us a picture.
Thank you.
The roles of maritime safety training centers is very clear from that, and that's really appreciated. So let us move to our first speaker, our first keynote speaker. It's Alan Beechner. Alan Beechner and Altada emerged from the International Security Accelerator in Cork, and they have one of the top AI companies in Europe, optimizing predictions post-COVID rollout in the healthcare, security, event, maritime, logistics, and financial services. So we are very pleased to have Alan here, and he's going to fill us in on the state of play in the AI and machine learning and big data industry, and some of the learning practices in that. So over to you, Alan. I'll go on mute.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Roberto. Very interesting. I'm sure it's going to appeal to a lot of people on the webinar this morning. Firstly, hello from Altada's HQ in Cork. Thankfully, it's a beautiful sunny day here, so it's always a pleasure to be in Ireland when it's sunny, I guess. Again, thank you to CorkBIC for asking me to join today's webinar. And obviously, this is a hugely passion project for myself in terms of technology. So just to give you the background, to expand upon Michael's point, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Altada. We are an artificial intelligence dedicated company. We work very closely with companies based in the financial services, security streams, travel, and to some degree working closely with companies in the healthcare vertical. We're looking at, I guess, a watershed moment for artificial intelligence over the last 18 months, where worldwide spending on AI is expected to double over the next 4 years, reaching a phenomenal 110 billion investment up to close to 2024 and beyond. The source for that is IDC, who worked intricately on addressing how AI is going to be deployed into different verticals and industries. And I guess the adoption of AI is now horizontal across all different sectors and industries. And again, that brings us on caveats in terms of some of the issues that we're experiencing within the industry from a client-facing perspective. So just trying to assist clients to navigate through what artificial intelligence will do for their business on a strategic level. So I always kind of speak to kind of four main points around when we engage with a client, partner, or associate, the things that they should consider before embarking on the investment in new technology. And that's set a strategy. Looking at the strategy and looking at the potential impact in your business requires you to choose a domain, choose a department that AI will significantly improve, either through the bottom line or, employee experience, customer engagement, looking at it could be innovation, it could be driving digital transformation, and ensure that that team is sponsored and has somebody within the team at a senior level that can drive that agenda. Again, looking at readily addressable issues. So looking at business champions, people within the business that are responsible for the value chain, looking at dedicated senior staff to get involved with an interaction with a company like yourself. So identifying a product owner, a person responsible for the solution delivery, somebody that I refer to as a translator who bridges the analytics and the business realms. And also a change lead is essential in terms of how that company is going to adopt an AI culture. And it is a culture, because bringing in AI and other technologies into business is in essence a change management effort. So looking at that practical approach and identifying practitioners that can work with data science, analysts, engineering, designers, and business analysts within the organization. So looking at that agile approach to how will I deploy artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other disciplines. It's central to the success. So looking at that cluster of frontline individuals that will work with knowledge workers within the organization that understand the day-to-day activity and how you're going to structure that. The second point is structuring the team. So it's not just, a technology project or doesn't fall under IT. It's quite important that each of the domains or business lines within your company understand why you're deploying and why you're engaging with a new technology to help with the business to move forward. So identify people from the business, from the digital arena, analytics, IT functions, and then also looking at the operations side of things. So is this going to be a new way of working for the company? And to some great extent it is. You are looking at more objective and results-driven solutions. You're looking at how do you organize yourself. And obviously, the caveat to that is something that we've all experienced over the last 18 to 20 months, which is working remotely, right? So how do you enable people to work remotely safer, more efficiently and effectively? And this is one of the main reasons AI has taken such a vertical increase over the last 18 to 20 months, because a lot of entities, a lot of companies have identified really quickly that working remotely requires a digital transformation strategy, because the data is now moving in flight, it's in motion. And the role of management, including myself, is to ensure that you're creating an optimum environment for your teams, employees, and partners, and also your customers to be able to engage with you without barriers, and ensuring that the success doesn't impede growth, that it encourages it, which is the next part of kind of what I refer to stage 2, which is reimagine your BAU, which is your business as usual. So always look at how do I encourage my business to reinvent? How do I encourage and promote new ways of thinking? And how do I embed it, assist people along the journey of better customer care, better thinking techniques, reverse engineering any of the issues that you've come up against in the past, and embracing technology to assist that. And again, it is very much adoption of AI, and it does become a cultural change. So culture fit is necessary to head to that, what I refer to stage 4, which is adapt and look at your technology and organization change. And this is the domino effect in terms of once you start developing a strategy for AI, once you start deploying it, it develops maturely within your organization, and it becomes a new rhythm for imagining parts of the business. It exposes and also identifies the places that are ready to expand or not. And it looks at that foundation. How are you going to build the skills internally to drive your business forward and propel without creating silos or poor decision making based on taking weeks and hours, hours, weeks and days to make decisions, where ultimately if you have a strategy for growth and if you accelerate it within your organization for digital transformation, you can make decisions quicker, faster. You can make better decisions based on the actual data, and you can assist the organization to make that transition. A good example of this would be speaking to some of the experience that Altada have had over the last, again, just close to 2 years now, would be within COVID-19 task forces globally. So during the pandemic, it's not something that we publicly market or speak to, but it is something that we were heavily involved in, and we are quite proud of our engagement from that perspective. But we worked with a number of COVID-19 task forces to assist with prediction of the spread of the virus within healthcare industries, particularly within the US, New Jersey, New York area. During that time, we learned really quickly that there was so much data in different areas, different discussion points, news being deployed, results being discussed at a global level, that one of our first pursuits was to find the golden source or the golden truth. So removing any of the data points that were leading to incorrect results or fake news, as has been referred to. So during that process, we ingested significant large data sets across, again, different domains, different sources, open source, internal, parsed it with data that we received from healthcare providers, and then came up with a model that did predict within a significant and acceptable level of accuracy, somewhere between 73 and 82% accuracy based on first iteration of what the virus is going to achieve, and then benchmarked from there. So it was an interesting pivot for us in terms of what we had to do quite quickly to address something that was midterm and real term. The second use case that we could speak to is something that we're working very closely on a daily basis, is addressing digital transformation within the financial services sector. So that's one of our biggest, one of our largest business streams. Within that industry, we're looking at asset management, in particular movement of information associated with portfolio management. So different asset classes, non-performing loans, predictive and prescriptive, looking at how data can, give you some form of remediation or some kind of advanced prediction of what's going to happen within a certain asset class. So on a day-to-day basis, our team work very closely with a number of departments within our clients' companies, which is legal, financial, fund management, and client-facing. So they have to learn really quickly the processes and become embedded with our clients and understand the culture. Again, the key focus here is to get to a point that the AI adoption is maturing, and you have your stakeholders that are in step to with your team and understand that you may have a good plan today is better than a perfect plan next week, and just embrace change and be open to collaboration and be open to, certainly innovation does always drive change within the organization and within your organization. So ultimately the plan will change. That's a definite. Things will not go to plan. That's also definite. And they always take 3 times longer than you planned. So just building that into your process from an engagement perspective is, in essence, how you would get to a level of success when applying AI as an adoption and a culture fit. Again, what I would just like to kind of re-examine or focus upon, without belaboring the point, is teams should always consider the potential impact that an AI initiative will have, not only on the upstream, but also downstream processes before you implement, and learn to address that. Because again, the domino effect is change within the organization will move between different departments, and it will assist you to drive the business forward if you learn from the experience and if you embrace that it does take a level of time, effort, and engagement and investment to get to a point where you're comfortable that you have a data-driven organization, which will ultimately accelerate your efforts of adoption, customer traction, depending on what your metrics is. So again, imagine how you're going to deploy, structure the team that's going to deliver it, set your strategy, and then internalize those decisions with key stakeholders that will assist you to drive that progress forward and assist you with the next stages of growth. And again, hope that was of some benefit to everybody today, or if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them now, Michael.
Yeah, just one quick one, Alan. Can you go into, for some of us that are less initiated, but the process of artificial intelligence and how it works, for a start, and secondly, then the difference between AI and machine learning and the types of people that you would get on board for each of those disciplines?
Yeah, so the first part is, I guess, what is it and what's it going to do, Michael, right? in terms of initiation. So, ultimately you're opening up your organization to, bringing in a technology, as artificial intelligence is a technology, which is going to look at ways that you can understand and better understand your data and understand what is happening within your organization. So artificial intelligence, if you look at kind of, quoting the Superintelligence Machine by Nick Bostrom, right? It's, in essence, is superintelligence, and it is cognitive but not conscious. So you're looking at the cognitive approach to how do I provide a better reporting mechanism in my business, either front-facing or back office. And depending on how you look at that is how you will deploy AI. So artificial intelligence, again, is not to be belabored, but it is an advancement of analytics from an information perspective, and then you're driving towards growth of the, nirvana or utopia for an organization, that they get to the point that they have a digital transformation strategy that's driving automation, efficiency, and growth.
Okay, and then the difference between artificial intelligence and the learning in that, and then machine learning, when you start running the data through multiple machines and the algorithms that exist to give the benefit in those spaces.
But it's capabilities, right? I mean, you could move the point and argue the point that you're on a journey where machine learning could be articulated as machine learning in terms of how does an organization, benefit from, example, NLP, which is language processing. And then you'd look at the different skills. So the core differences between machine learning and AI is, it's in essence, you're looking at the symbolic issues relating to AI. So artificial intelligence means that you're heading towards that critical decision-making element, where machine learning is just identifying how do you understand the data, and you're applying, methods to identify the benefit within the data. So you could argue the point that depending on where you sit and what the use case is and what data you're consuming, that ML is the pathway to AI for an organization. Whereas some organizations would be, reverse engineering that, and we'll be looking at artificial intelligence deployment initially, and then see what methods of machine learning, what different models will receive, will they work on, or what will they apply to their own business and their assets.
So if I was a startup and I was looking to establish a proof of concept with a customer, and I'm scanning the horizon for that, what should I do? That's not an easy question.
I'll tell you what I would do, but I think that's not the answer you're looking for, right?
What did you do? Because you started with the blank sheet of paper at one stage, and you iterated your way through that, because this is a common challenge, and the calls out there with this program at the moment give the opportunity for young emerging companies, development teams to work with a training center to get there. So that's one example, but I'm not talking about that specifically. But if you're in the startup space and you want to establish a presence on the back of artificial intelligence, how do you do that? Because a lot of organizations have it labeled, but they aren't doing any of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that in very specific terms, Michael, because I'm actually part of the NSAI, which is the National Standards for AI Top Team. So we're currently drafting recommendations on to how to help SMEs to get to that point. So, looking across the horizon, back to your point, is who will I engage with? Who are the companies that can work with me from an AI perspective? Choosing the right development framework. How can you steer the project in the correct place? So you need to demonstrate clear advantage, right? So you need to look at what is the actual output of this investment? What problem am I going to solve? So it's not as simple just to say I want to deploy AI to optimize my environment, optimize my entity or my organization. You need to demonstrate value. So looking at clear research, define your goals, looking at how do you demonstrate a benefit, how do you demonstrate that the project was a success or not. So looking at that starting point. So, engaging with, again, domain experts in AI is going to be a critical part of that. So essentially it's a matchmaking exercise, right? Where you look at, is there a cultural fit with a company that can provide that expertise? And then look at the maturity of what needs to be done with that use case. So is it, again, front facing? Is it downstream? Is it upstream? When you look at resources also, Mike, it's very important to identify if you have the resources internally or not. And if you don't, do you require do you require a recruitment drive to ensure that you have the skills in-house? Or can you look at, moving into an incubator stage or mentoring stage where you work with some of the larger innovation hubs in Ireland, which obviously there's quite a few and they're very well established and there to support. Again, expert advice is key. Another point to consider is just, the underlying compliance of the information that you're using, just to ensure that you've built that into your planning. Can I actually use this data for the purpose? And again, we do have to, from an ethical and trustworthy perspective, you do have to look at that. So understand the ethical competency as well of who you're dealing with. Clarify the difference between the data scientist and the data analyst. Again, these are fundamental changes and differences. And back to your point earlier, Mike, the difference between ML and AI, which can be a lot more times than not amalgamated, which isn't entirely correct. Do you need to hire any AI resources? Do you have the skills that you can contract or consult with? Set a minimum standard for delivery. You have to have a pathway of what you're looking to address. And again, there has to be some kind of commercial benefit. Is it, how are we going to use this product? What problem is it identifying? Do we have the problem well defined? How can we create a roadmap or a plan with key steps? Market viability. Again, identify sectors for potential growth. Identify emerging tech that will assist you on your journey. It's not just the case that you build it as a POC. Is this going to become something that's adopted and deployed? There is also risks that you need to look at. So identifying any potential risks, disruption to business. Is it a distraction? Is it absorbing resources that you don't have right now? So therefore, the questions that you would have to ask yourself in the beginning is, the POC would be essentially a partnership model. And then you're identifying barriers to market, route to market. And then, the main point is always timing, budget, resources, right? So you're getting into education internally, not only education about AI, but how can I develop a strategy? What is the rules for engagement? Do we require this in terms of, is it this quarter, next quarter? Is it business critical? element of innovation. And then obviously you're going to hit the innovations dilemma, which is innovating for the sake of innovating within an organization is always quite risky.
Yeah, got it. So we've got one question here, and then we'll move to the panel. It's not an easy question, so if you could, but we'll be open with the audience. We're taking all questions that we can take. Is from Brian Sheridan, who you both know, and so if you could really be succinct on it, because there may be no easy answer on stage anyway. So it says, is there a particular vertical Altada will focus its core growth on in addition to fintech, healthcare, etc., or will these verticals be the focus? So it's a wide question, and it's
not difficult. It's not difficult. It's not difficult when you have the answer, right?
30 seconds.
Yeah. So fintech is obviously 80-20 rule. 80% of our business is fintech. Healthcare is slightly anecdotal from our perspective, but we do have quite a focus on travel tech and security within the travel industry post-COVID. So that's one element of our business line that we are addressing. But from an 80%, 85% of focus, it will be in the financial services sector.
Okay, fantastic. And here what we're talking about is how do you, and as we move into the panel discussion, we'll see now how we move those skills into other sectors and hitting verticals in those sectors. And sometimes in the sectors, they overlap. One sector actually spreads to a bunch of other sectors. And here we're talking also bringing in logistics and transport around that, and maritime and security. Some of the things, the skills you're in already, not all of them by a long way. So we've got a panel from those sectors, so we will start to move to that, if we may, Alan. And thank you for that. Thank you for your wisdom on it. And you're going to stay around in the panel discussion that we're going to now have. We're just going to widen it out to more people and maybe have some controversy, hopefully. So stay online, don't move. And so if I may introduce our panel this morning, we have quite diverse panel. So we have Gwyn Birchall, who is a software engineering manager in a new startup. Well, new, it's 10 years old, but is in Kielvar, and previously has worked in Dell, so has driven engineering teams in these spaces and delivered across sectors, but also with diversity. So you're very welcome, Gwyn. Mike Fitzgerald, who runs a company, NetFasa, that's based on logistics, tracking ships, containers, ports and yards across the world, from safety, security and performance, and does that with security, and currently operates that out of Ireland, Kerry, and also Silicon Valley. Niamh Parker. Niamh, you're very welcome. Neil Parker is the head of legal and also people in Altada, and so is going to talk about how do you protect the intellectual property, because this data is moving all over the world, but also how do you build the people? The asset of many of these emerging companies, and Gwyn and Niamh would confirm that, is the people that you have on board and also how you train them. So those are our panelists. You're very welcome, and of course yourself, Alan. So the first question really is, let's go out from the tech and into the people side of it, identifying and building tech teams and applications and getting that momentum together. And maybe I could start with Gwyn, and you're coming at this from another world, but there's AI at part of the delivery solution. Just briefly for a minute, just describe what Kielvar does, and then then address the question of the people side of it and how you manage that.
Perfect.
Your challenges, engineering to product.
I've got plenty of challenges. So Kielvar as an organization is going after smart sourcing. So looking at the way, exactly like Alan was saying, looking at a particular job that people do and how do we make that easier, smarter, better for organizations? How do we deliver efficiencies for them? So we've got our mainstay product, which would be Sourcing Optimizer, which would take large strategic events and apply artificial intelligence to them, and also just optimizations to the processes so that we can make it easier for procurement teams to run these events. We also have an automation space where we want to do spot events and make it easier for the companies to do much smaller events more frequently and get them done in, within an hour, turning them around really quickly when they have something that they need to deliver fast. So that's what we're doing as an organization. And just, I suppose, leaning on what you're saying there about building teams, where we came from in Keelvar was a team of 10 engineers, say 18 months ago. We're now within our engineering organization, I think at last count 37. So massive expansion in a very short amount of time. And with that comes huge challenges around onboarding, making people effective quickly. When you have knowledge silos within your organization, people haven't had to share out the knowledge because there was such a small group, and communication is easy in small groups. But as you expand that out, it's very, very hard when people are sitting there going, I really need to talk to somebody, but I can't get their time. And similarly, because we're remote, that's a particular challenge. And also then, like you said, building teams with diversity. So a lot of the people that would have been in Keelvar at the start were based off academic backgrounds. That's great, and it absolutely got the product up and running. But to build a path to product and to really build something that is marketable, that's appealing to more than just one organization, you need diversity of thought, whether that's diverse backgrounds, diversity in roles. So, having quality embedded, having DevOps embedded, having all of those kind of different responsibilities and roles embedded in how you're building your product, along with also having your product in mind, not just where your strategic partner wants your product to go, but where you want your product to go in mind. All of those things, you need that in the conversation. And that's something we certainly found as we expanded out. We were looking for more diverse people to come into the organization.
Great, thank you. And Niamh, do you want to put the Altada flavor on that, because you've been in a big hiring mode over the last 18 months for sure, and in particular on the issues of motivation of tech teams. And
I was trying not to do a big sigh there, Michael, when you were saying you've been hiring so many people. But yeah, I mean, similar to Gwen, we went from 9 in 2019 to 73 now today across all departments. And the myth around people saying that if you introduce AI and have AI adoption in your organization, that you'll have less staff is not true, because there's so many roles that I've not seen before, that I've never heard of before, that are our leaders and our C-suite are looking to hire. Some roles are particularly interesting, but the point is that it's becoming very, very niche, so that from product owner to delivery to customer success to we've R&D, we've university relations on the other side, where we're kind of getting the pipeline all along for the talent to keep coming into Altada. Why we're different, creating like AI possible boot camps. And how we started to kind of build on the talent pipeline was we did a brand positioning exercise around, I think it's almost a year we started it, and we got our trademarks there just the last couple of months around AI possible. So we took the position that Altada and Altada's team were going to make AI possible. And from taking that position, it's really helped us to tell our story to new people coming into the organization, especially from the C-suite. And what we found is that people really want to be part of an organization that has a purpose and that has a real culture, and is not just saying culture for the sake of culture, is that we really are trying to change how things are done and change in the different sectors that we're operating out of. So that's been hugely important. In terms of motivation, I think just be very honest about it. Work is work and play is play, and try and introduce as much play as you can into the workplace and as much fun as you can, and just get real about it. Work is work, and just allow a lot of flexible working options. We're doing a condensed working week at the moment where you can do a 3-day week every month. We've got a wellness program in place, an EAP program, which is readily being used, and just ongoing leadership and coaching training, because it's been a particularly challenging 18 months, 2 years almost for everybody in the globe. So it's about bringing that culture also into how you treat your customers and how you are with your clients. So the culture is not just internal, it's also external, and it's building those relationships with your strategic clients so that they keep coming back for more use cases and solving more challenges for them as an organization. And if you're creating shareholder value for your clients, then they're going to tell the world about you, and then you're going to get more referrals and more clients from them as well. So I think culture is internal and external. That has helped us a lot. One last thing is just the mission and the vision. I can't stress how important it was for us as a leadership team to do that in our recent offsite, to really go through what we're about and the rules of engagement as an organization. And that's how we interact with each other, and then how we have respect for each other in the organization has really helped us achieve what we've achieved over the last 12 to 18 months also.
And then the diversity of that between cultures, nationalities, gender, there's a whole bunch of things. How did that happen, or did you steer that, or was it a combination of both?
So because 80% of our business is in North America, we started some key hires in North America, which brought in a kind of a diversity of thought from a multinational perspective. So if Altada wants to be, a global company, I suppose, competing with multinationals with what we delivered, then we had to be multinational in our thinking. So we hired from that space, and then we were able to build out the processes and procedures and like how we operate as a company. And then for us, investing back into India has been hugely beneficial. We're opening our Delhi office in December. So what we felt is, because we've got a lot of Indian members on our team, that they were just so happy that we were investing back into India and actually going after business in India as well, and diversifying that team. And then leveraging the European tech talent by opening the Malta office has been so exciting, because we're getting, a huge amount of quantum engineers, blockchain engineers, and AI expertise over there as well. So it has a bit of diversity, because what we found during COVID was there was an uncertainty with how many of our team would remain in Ireland, and a lot of them did go back to their country of origin. So we wanted to insulate ourselves from that. And I've been moving off news since I came back to Ireland, because there's still so much speak of COVID and so much advertising on the radio and on the television, and even on Sky, and the ads is all about COVID and the cases and the hospitalization. So it's hard for people not to switch off to that. So we wanted to insulate Altada from what if we're brought into lockdown again in Ireland, by having an R&D centre in Athens and a European tech hub in Malta, and expanding out from there. And as Alan mentioned, Singapore is on the cards for us as well this year. But we're really excited about Delhi, and our team's really excited about Delhi. So that's going to be a big part of our journey, I think.
Fantastic, thank you. And Mike, working across distributed teams, you work across the world in moving to marine operations, in often 24/7, a lot of money flowing around the world in some of the operations that you're managing. And tell us a little bit about that and some of the challenges, and how the AI and big data management works in that, and the particular platforms you use to move the data around so it's real time and secure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little different. I mean, what we tend to do is, our job is, we're in the world of IoT. So what we're doing is we're, the world, as we've talked about it earlier in the conversation, we're digitally transforming the supply chain. So in order to do that, there's a huge amount of the supply chain that's not properly tracked. I mean, the challenge that we walked into was that, 90% of world goods are carried in containers, but we don't track the containers. We track everything around the containers. So we're tracking ships, and we're tracking trucks, and we're tracking trains, but we're not actually tracking the container, which is kind of nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense to do that. When there's over 1 million trucking companies in Europe and over 1 million trucking companies in the States, there are some of the clients that we talk to, they have hundreds of people making telephone calls to dispatchers and trucking companies, and actually to the trucks, to figure out where the trucks are. So we have this kind of fallacy that we believe that we actually understand exactly where our goods are, and we know where they are, and we see these screens where you see your little package move across the world, but it's not actually correct. It's it's a little bit of a facade. So what's happening is that we're saying, right, we've got to track the container. And so we started off, as everyone does in this world, with the refrigerated container. And what we're doing is we're implementing AI on that. So what you have to do is you don't just track, you don't just monitor, for example, temperature. You look at the metadata around all of that. So we're able to conclude from just tracking the temperature of containers as they move across the supply chain. We're actually able to track the signal strength between the base stations and the actual containers. And using machine learning algorithms, we're able to deduce where and how that's moving. So we're going away from traditional way of looking at things. And we're doing a lot of this with Tyndall and, UCC's Tyndall, where we're doing a whole bunch of power management and energy harvesting. So the idea would be that the device on the container never actually runs out of energy, because it harvests the energy, and then we use AI to understand where we are. So for example, a container, using machine learning, we can deduce that it's in a port. We don't have to go to GPS and take GPS coordinates and burn up the battery. So this is a lot of what we're doing. So we're able to actually conclude, is it on a truck? Is it on a train? Is it in the port? Is it on a ship? And using AI across different indirect, metadata, like we said, like signal strength and timing advance and different things, we're able to conclude to 100% accuracy where exactly that container is. So our clients may have just wanted to track the container and monitor the temperature, but now we're able to give them far more. For example, a spin-off piece of metadata and machine learning has resulted in determining that the container has been picked up by a crane and dropped in the port. We're now moving between two insurance policies. So this whole concept of what's called jurisdiction now comes into play. So it's functionality that we can offer outside of what we typically offered, which was just monitoring the temperature of the container. So that's kind of where we're going to. And as we move on more and more into what's called the dry container, which is 95% of all the containers are not refrigerated, they're just normal dry ones. As we monitor and we track those, machine learning becomes a huge part of the value that we can bring to the devices on board those containers, so that, the 14 years of life of a container, this particular device needs to last all that time. We can't go out to Africa and change the battery on a container. We have to make sure that whatever tracking device is put on it will last forever. And that's kind of where our work with Tyndall comes into play.
That's interesting. So containers going over the side of a ship at sea in a storm, they could be tracked and located and ultimately harvested for the assets on board, and B, for maritime security. Would that be?
Absolutely. I mean, we can actually alert the captain on a vessel that he's lost a container when he wouldn't have seen it fall off. And that's what happens quite a lot of the time. So we'd actually know immediately that there was an anomaly on the actual signal strength, and straight away be able to say, we've picked up an anomaly, which means that we believe you've actually dropped a container. This is where you've dropped it. So that's a big part of it.
That's a huge environmental impact and safety impact also, which is really, really interesting. So moving to platforms, maybe bring in Alan Beechner.
Yeah, Mike.
Hi.
That's
yeah.
right.
Just one of the things that actually productizes some of the AI solutions, and certainly things around big data, is having platforms and use cases. Use cases are the end delivery, but platforms are often the vehicle under which, some of your software would run and interact with other people's platforms, and therefore there'd be a data exchange between them. And tell us the power of that in this sector, because in the marine sector, there could be platforms that could work with one marine safety training center that would then be transportable across the world to others, because it's almost a platform as a product now, and therefore the platform as a service and the software as a service, the use case, are the revenue generation pay-as-you-go tools in the sector.
Yeah, so back to Mike's point, I guess this is an ideal example, Mike, of your question earlier, right? What is the difference between a cognitive technology that's learning human behavior, which is AI, or a machine that's, programmed to learn from previous data sets? So you look at, you're kind of pulling in what's the complex problem you're solving, and what is the repeatable essence of the subset of AI, which is sensor data, pattern recognition, anomaly detection, something happened, So then you can start deploying similar use cases. You could look at deployment of autonomous vehicles, for example, to address a specific issue or a specific risk that does not require a human, right? You could look at complex issues of the platform will bring in all of the different data sets you could parse in, geospatial data, satellite data. You could look at information that's being shared between different organizations and then deploy across kind of somewhat of a platform approach or somewhat of a use case driven approach to solving multiple issues in the maritime sector. So it could be used for training, it could be used for propensity models, deterministic, it could be used as a risk calculation. I guess, back to Mike's point earlier, he's deploying technology at a scale for, addressing issues that are going to come up in the future from previous data. So that's an ideal application of an AI platform, because you've got repeatable models, you've got data that has, in essence, identified the issue previously, albeit it could have been with human interaction. So you could argue the point that removes the human element to focus on the more sophisticated issues that are cropping up,
Great. And then how do you monetize those solutions then, Alan? I'll ask you again because, and then I'll move to maybe Mike.
Yeah, I mean, the information,
you do a lot of work.
Yeah, the information is key, right? So if you can avoid somebody else having to go into the process of building out that engine with the data sets, and you've already brought, a conclusion or some kind of deterministic outcome, that information in itself is valuable. And then there's also an efficiency level which you're driving automation within the organizations.
Yeah, so there is initial development, some contributional payment towards that, and then there is a pay-as-you-go as it's deployed and as the value is created. Is that?
Yeah, so use case driven, model driven, and then you've got, I guess, again, discovery, right?
Okay, fantastic, thank you. And tell me, Gwen, your experience in Kielva and the solutions that you're delivering, and how is revenue generated? And because sometimes amongst all of this, some young technical team is saying to themselves, if I get into this, how do I build they call it a revenue model, but how do you build revenue on which you can therefore leverage co-investment, leverage partnership, and leverage ultimately investment?
Sure. So for us, from a revenue perspective, it's software as a service. Okay. So what we provide is a service that people will use for their strategic events, and they'll pay us for that, whether they pay us per event or per spot bids. We'll have a contract around that, and it'll be, pay as you use the service. We split our time, obviously. So there's a lot of work that we would do that would be based on agreeing a contract for custom integrations, custom work as well. So as we build features out, we may have investment from different organizations to support us because they would like to see us take the product in that direction as well. And that's where your strategic alliances are really crucial, finding the right companies to work with that, again, will take your product to where you want it to go.
Great. So the organization that you're building has to be strategic alliance partnership friendly, and has to be able to engage with people in that space. And that's a kind of very special culture. And it's not on a board. Typically, it's in the gut. So maybe, Niamh, you could tell me a little bit about that culture and the partnership culture. The alliance culture and how that works. It's not always all written down.
I think, it kind of starts with, when you're referring to the AI platform approach, Mike. So if you're an operational AI platform where your models and your use cases and I call it the cool stuff you do with the data is happening in a particular, in different components on a particular platform, then it's very easy to box that off into an operational AI platform for your intellectual property. So for us, our proprietary CCV method, where we categorize, we verify the data at source, and we choose what outputs we're going to do for our client when we're scoping out the project. So in a very, very clear discovery phase, as Alan mentioned. So once we have the discovery phase done, then we kind of say, okay, this is what our engine will do. And then we have to, I think one of our skip level meetings last week, one of our engineers in the DevOps department said to me, I said, well, look, what exactly do you do now to improve this model? What are you doing? And he said, just think of it as a restaurant where I'm bringing the food from the chef to the table. So I'm bringing this part in and I'm putting it onto the table to allow us to ingest the files quicker and to speed up the process of how we're doing things and the methods that we're doing it. So once we know what our engine does for our client, then we can decide how our client is going to consume what our engine is doing. And then that is where the use case comes in. So I would say like enter the use case. Then there's a payment for that use case for a particular outcome for the client. But remember that all of the learning and all of the previous learning, the machine learning and all the documents that Altada have previously read and scanned and got outcomes from is owned by Altada. All of that intelligence is owned by Altada. And what we're giving to the client is the outputs that they use to make better decisions, whether it's on, loan files that they're bidding against to, or there's, pre-closure, whatever it is, whether it's on non-performing loans or performing loans, or at the moment we're working on a new credit platform. So you can imagine the trust that you'd have to have with your partner, whereby there's large amounts of credit data, coming into our platform, and that we're deciding from the clients is driving this with like what outputs they want Altada to bring from that credit data on our new credit platform. So the intelligence that we've built on is the years of the guys training on millions of data sets. And then we can bring those outputs to our client and they can benefit from that. And again, as you mentioned, like in a plug and play, but when you're talking about files, it's very easy to get into an ingestion model, which means that it would be on the amount of files or the amount of data that's been processed, and then you can build them from the amount of data. But they get actionable insights, actionable outputs. So they own all of the outputs and the creativity that they've come up with in terms of the use case. But all of the intelligence is in the platform and in the engine, which is owned by Altada. So it's a really clever way to separate the different IP strands as well. Because sometimes your clients will think that this is their IP because they were so clever in coming up with a way to conjure up what the output might be. But remember, all of the intelligence lies with the provider, with Altada. So you have to be very, very clear. And that's why your contracts there has to be no ambiguity, and they have to be very clear. And you have to actually write it in black and white what you're doing for the client, so that they understand that your engine is performing this and they're getting the outputs from the engine, which is what they're providing to their clients in fast, actionable insights. So it's a very interesting space, but trust is a big part of it. And yes, you have to be able to trust your gut. And, like 90% of the time, if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. But as you said, that's very hard to discuss at board level when you have some spidey senses that something's not right. But you have to be vocal about it, and you have to, just listen to your gut as well. And, contracts will save you all the time. And we were so lucky that Brian McGillia joined our team. So we actually have an IP council, Chief Intellectual Property Council, working with us now daily, protecting our IP and carving out our IP strategy. And we have a number of patents that, we're currently filing. And, that's hugely exciting that, these inventions and these methodologies and these components are patentable. So, it kind of, you're adding you're creating shareholder value for your investors also, but then you're delivering super results for your client as well. So it works well on both sides. And, don't be afraid to own it, if you've created it. And there's a lot of really clever people working out these use cases and improving our engine all the time. So it's only right that, they get the recognition for that as well through patents and other trade secrets that we have as well.
Yeah, so really, really important to not run in all directions and focus on specific situations and then protect those, I think. And I think you made a very, very good point there, that that allows then development to continue in those particular areas and therefore deliver value long term. So,
yeah, because it's hard to see it, Michael. I mean, I'm always saying that I'm like Mary Robinson with the hands when I'm speaking to clients when we're finalizing contracts, and I'm like, okay, so this is what happens, the data comes in here and this is what we do to it. it comes down here, then we apply this, this, and this to it. And then when it comes out here, this is your use case, this is what you get. But Altada is performing all of this for you on your behalf. And this is what you're paying for, which is your use case. And it's your solution. And what we've done as well is we've divided them into solutions. So we've got Pyrite, which is our financial services solution. So everything on the financial services platform is Pyrite. And then we have other platforms as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And over to you, Mike. Mission critical applications. They always tend to lock in partnership and customers and give some longevity of business process. And in the area that you're operating with, ports, security organizations, sometimes government organizations, as well as the shipping industry across the world, give us some examples of mission critical applications that would have worked for yourself in NetVasa.
I mean, like, when you talk about the supply chain and the cold chain, you know, this was critical. You know, one of our clients delivered product to one of the biggest supermarket chains in the United States, and the product was contaminated. It was rotten. And when they went back through the supply chain, they had found that the conclusion was that the product had been refrigerated at sea on a ship, and it had disconnected from its power source, and all of the product rotted. And then it reconnected because it was a stormy weather, so the ship is rolling in the ocean. And about 3 days later, when everything was rotten, it reconnected and froze everything. So when you got to the point where they do a check, they checked the temperature and said it was fine. So they delivered it to the supermarket chain, and it got to the shelves, it got to the homes, and kids and parents, you know, were actually poisoned. Nobody died, but quite a few people fell ill. So that was a class action lawsuit that absolutely riddled the insurance company, the shipping company, and all the way back along the chain. So the insurance people said, look, guys, you know, plugging in containers and you know, in the context of the cold chain is just not acceptable. We're going to have something that's wireless, something that's completely guaranteed. We need to find out if anything happens to the temperature of these goods. Blood products, you know, stuff going to factories, you can't have that happen. So that became a big part of it. So from our perspective, it was helpful that there was that kind of drive, that there were insurance companies that were pushing hard to get this kind of this guaranteed you know, reliability that we actually could find our way along. And the whole point was people are trying to implement blockchain in transportation, the supply chain, but it's actually comical because you can't put blockchain into a situation where a telephone call is made all the way down through the supply chain to find out where something is, and then you manually input data that's pushed up into blockchain. That's not how it's supposed to work. So IBM and Maersk and these guys were trying to claim that they were starting a joint venture in AI in this space, and we were laughing, saying, guys, what are you doing here? You're manually inputting data into blockchain. That's not how it should be. It should be, you know, IoT driven. There should be an actual live feed of information every point all the way along from the factory to the distribution center and onto into retail. So that's kind of where we're winning that argument, and it's fun. It's fun because it's kind of it's the supply chain, and right now, you know, we don't know where the empty containers are. So that one of the biggest issues that's facing the world, and you know, our Christmas presents won't arrive because empty containers are scattered all across the continents, and they're trying to get them back to the shipping companies, get them back to the ports, and get them back to China, which you know, is the country that made quite a lot out of this pandemic. Unfortunately, that's what's happened. So there's been we've knocked the supply chain off kilter during this whole COVID-19 thing, and therefore to bring it back, we're saying, guys, let's start afresh. Let's connect every container. Let's bring in proper blockchain, and let's be able to figure out, you know, when we have empty containers sitting in different factories across the world, we should be able to use an Uber Eats model to nudge them down using smaller entities, whatever, that will see that they're available, will spot them on a live, you know, dashboard, and be able to get them back to the ports cheaply, which is the issue they're having.
Fantastic. And if you were looking forward, I'll go around to each of you, and there's emerging companies coming out all the time, and you're looking at the AI space and managing large data, providing services. How would you go about it if you're trying to build a team to do that? And maybe start with yourself, Alan, and then maybe I'll go to each of them for just a quick quick response, and then what we'll try and do is then start pulling this together and some Q&A. So Alan, over to you.
Have skin in this game, Michael. Overnight success, 20 years, you know.
When you said 2 years, I said, I looked at you and I said, that's
there's a zero onto that, man. But I mean, look, you have to associate yourself and embed yourself with the sophisticated ecosystem in Ireland, and I say that in my hand to my heart.
It's international because we have a European audience.
Yeah, but like in terms of, you know, identifying the academic research centers and support networks that are in place to get you on the track for development of a strategy, right? So you have to understand where the talent's going to come from. And most of these guys are sitting within the innovation hubs, research hubs, and within the academia ecosystem. Okay.
Great, fantastic. And so Gwen, you've been in hire mode in recent times, always. If somebody was starting a new business, how would they go about it?
I think you really need to understand the skill set that you need. So obviously you need data scientists, you need people with backgrounds in all the AI kind of space, but you also need people from more diverse roles. You need to look at it, like for me, Niamh, like having somebody from legal and HR to really shape how you're handling these people. You want to retain your talent once you get it. So you need to be able to show how you progress people through the organization, how you support them, how you create that great culture so that you keep your, you keep your true values throughout your scaling of your organization, which is really critical. So I think from a talent perspective, that it's not only about finding the right people, but it's about knowing the skills that you need and also how you keep them, how you build the culture to allow them to be innovative as you move into the more demanding path to product way of working.
Fantastic. And Niamh, having been through you're still going through it, the startup process, what would you say to, if you were mentoring
if I was mentoring
advising a new company, a new group?
I would say the co-founding team, like I would start there because, it's just hugely beneficial to have a co-founder if you don't have one. And I wouldn't say just go out and pick any co-founder, but be really sure that they're aligned with your goals, and the passion that you have for disrupting in your sector. And then from there, the HR hire, like your head of talent is hugely important, and like really spend time onboarding that person for them to really understand. So then that kind of saves time with your screening processes as well with HR, because it's so easy to hire. And I think it was Eileen from CorkBIC that always says to me, is like, you hire slow, fire fast, and that's been hugely beneficial for me for that advice, because we've slowed it down, but we've also got so good at screening because our head of talent and HR, Diane, is just so good at spotting the cultural, she weeds it out very, very quickly. So that would be my top advice: find a co-founder and then hire slow, fire fast.
Fantastic. And finally, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just watching my oldest son just started over in the States now with Gartner, and I'm just monitoring their onboarding. It's stunning. I mean, this is like hourly interaction with team members. I've never seen anything like it. They just, the ability and the time that they're putting into it. And like, for the people on the call here, hiring so many people so fast, the ability to onboard to that minute detail, to be able to actually have people in the space of 2 weeks to get to know dozens of people in the organization from Zoom. I mean, that's what they're operating on, like we all are at the moment. So that's pretty stunning. But I mean, the other part, the diverse part, is very important. I mean, when people have a few years experience, it doesn't really matter what they've done in the past. For example, we had a call with the head of Google Maps. So you can imagine how big an entity that is and how much of a kind of a commercial, conglomerate Google Maps is because of what they do. The guy who runs the global head of Google Maps is a UCD law graduate. How did a UCD law graduate end up as the product head of Google Maps? But that's what happens. He just went out, everyone does, they just go out and get experience. And then after that, you've gathered your experience, you can pretty much do anything. So you do need the fundamental computer scientists at the heart of an AI organization or driven organization, whatever, but you need to have that diverse team as well.
For our European partners and friends online. UCD is Dublin University College Dublin. So let me just run at this point, just mention these calls that are out there at the moment, and then we'll go to Q&A and wrap up. So the calls are from Portugal, the Maritime Training Safety Centre there, and the university behind it. It's for intelligence solutions to verify compliance of programs with the marine training requirements. So marine training requirements, legal programs are all the training programs done at different 1 day, 5 day, 1 year, and having those managed, because it's a legal requirement if you're sending people into a safety or security situation. With Spain, the sole Spanish Marine Safety Training Center, SASAMAR, it's to look at the management of vessel tracking and collisions and grounding and risk. So all the traffic that in the sea that's going, and all the bathymetry, the depth, and also the voyage there, and mapping that real time, almost like air traffic control, but on a sophisticated basis, so that risk can be managed, particularly when you consider the areas which is under their control, the Straits of Gibraltar. And so it's large data managing several layers, which is what Alan was talking about, and putting those layers on and taking them off, and then forward predictions about that, and managing that across one area. That platform, if it works in one location, could actually work in others around the world. And then the final one is Munster Technological University, which also covers the Maritime College in Ireland. It's training and certification. It's gaining feedback from individuals, true feedback, rather than just ticking the box. And therefore, without any bias, to actually capture the response and how to change and organize the new courses, which are, again, as diverse as being talked about by the Portugal operations. And that needs an AI system, and therefore privacy and all the other issues become very important. Those are the calls. And so if we could take any questions from the audience, and then we'll go for a final wrap up with our great speakers. So maybe, Alan, is there anything there that we could?
Yeah, Mike, I was one point I was going to expand upon is
okay.
Obviously we're within Europe, and I've skin in the game in terms of looking at the demonstrative job that Ireland is doing to get itself on that center stage of AI to support companies in growth. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely, if not implore, definitely suggest to companies that are, even if they are based outside Ireland and based in Europe's scale, that they would look at partnering with innovation hubs and entities that are in Ireland that will assist them get on the AI journey, right? Obviously we can speak to that from our own experience as we started here. And then separately, there is some really good initiatives happening at a European level where European countries are starting to collaborate on development cycles with SMEs to encourage adoption of AI and other technologies. Obviously, Mike spoke to blockchain. We're deploying quantum computing in some areas of our business this year. So that's one thing I would definitely say to companies that are looking to get to the next stage. And then another benefit, Mike, is there's so much funding available within Europe and further afield for companies that are taking on AI initiatives and digital transformation. Definitely keep an eye on that closely in terms of grants that you can receive, support mechanisms, and companies that will looking to invest in startups and scale up companies would definitely be encouraged if that company is looking at a digital transformation and technology deployment.
Yeah. Thank you. And the disruption through COVID is an opportunity. And on that funding, the companies around this table have raised in excess of 25 million private equity since the start of COVID, which is fantastic, which allows growth and allows market support for what is happening. So what we'll do now is we'll wrap up, and if we go to the final, to each, and maybe start with Gwen. If you look at these use cases, and if you look at the that being discussed by the training centers, and you also look at the opportunities out there in the market for yourself, if you give us some comments about challenges and opportunities moving forward, from your own perspective, and how startups should go about it. So,
sure. So one of the things I didn't touch on, but I think is important, is that as you move into this space, as you start building your application, and I think Alan touched on this briefly, when you're choosing your technologies and your infrastructure, be very careful just that you build for the future. So as you look at the way you build your technology, you want to be in a position where you can onboard quickly, you can scale quickly, you can have interfaces with other systems quickly. It's something from a Keelvar perspective, we went a certain route, more like a monolithic application to start with, which worked for us at the start. Now we're seeing, as we want to onboard quickly, we need a more service-oriented architecture. And as we need to integrate more with external systems, we want a more API-driven approach. So there's certain things that as you go into starting up your applications, just bear that in mind, that you may want to scale, you may want to integrate, and you may want to onboard fast. So it's important to think about structuring your application for that.
Great. And Mike, some final comments, and maybe building on that theme.
For us, the learning that we found is that don't be too smart when it comes to AI and machine learning, in the sense that, get your data and run your data through the algorithms, and then bring in the smart team to do the analysis afterwards. There's a huge kind of barrier there where very, very experienced people, they don't trust machine learning because they don't need to, because they know exactly what's happening and they know what's going to happen. We're saying, no, wait a second, let's run the algorithms, let's run the data, and then let's do an analysis of the outcome. What happens then is there's all these eureka moments where they suddenly said, oh wow, now I see something here that I haven't seen before, because I've run the algorithm through. And we've had that in smart agriculture, in transportation, in refrigeration monitoring, and everything that we've done so far, even in water monitoring, some of the projects we do on the Dingle Peninsula. From an IoT perspective, every time there's a eureka moment after you've analyzed the data.
Fantastic. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's when you're thinking about it and planning, just get going, find the data and analyze it. That's great advice there, Mike. And Niamh?
I think on the challenges and opportunities, I'll echo what Mike just said there, is that your clients embracing and the adoption of AI is key to it. And we had a situation, in the last lot of loan files that one of our clients was utilizing, as far as that some of their team were still analyzing on the old system as well, just to be sure kind of thing. So I think it's definitely, embracing is that, like, they had the live docs on our system and then they were double checking manually on the other side. So I think it's definitely a cultural change. And Mike, I love your view, by the way. That must be a lovely place to be doing all your work from. It's absolutely gorgeous.
We have to promote Dingle all the time.
Yeah, I'm doing a great job. I think that's was a huge part of it. And I think as well, the opportunity part, Mike, just we saw Skyline AI, who just only managed around 400,000 loan files. Yeah, Alan, it wasn't a huge amount. But they just had a small bit of an acquisition for like 500 million from JLL. Somebody similar to one of our key clients in size. So it's just very interesting to see the opportunities is when there's a disruption in a sector that you can have great momentum around it. And I think that, yes, there is challenges with adoption, but when key clients start adopting it, then the opportunities can be absolutely huge, which is what we're experiencing at the moment with the adoption in disrupting Wall Street. And I said to a journalist recently, we're disrupting Wall Street. And he was like, oh, well, you can't write that. And I was like, why can't you write it? It's true. We're disrupting Wall Street. Yeah, exactly. So it's a very exciting opportunity for AI, but again, it needs to be a huge cultural shift for you and your clients, and you'll actually be hiring a lot more team than you thought you would with using AI and artificial intelligence, because it takes a lot of very smart people to make it work and to keep improving on it and iterating as well. So adaptation is huge. Change or die, Mike, is an old CorkBIC saying from one of the entrepreneur experience, and I think that if your clients don't want to change, they'll die, and if you don't change, you'll die. So it's who can get there first, really.
I still have my dinosaur, Mike, by the way. Jokingly, paradoxically, they stopped doing it manually because the machine was making less mistakes. But anyway, I better not say that publicly.
Yeah, appreciate that. So what's your final words of advice and at the strategic level? As an industry, a veteran, but also leader, and new companies going into this, and also, more importantly, the customers who are going to adopt and therefore fund those new companies. Just 30 seconds.
Right, me, Mike? Or...
Yeah, yourself, Alan.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just 30 seconds industry overview, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah, so just echoing all of the panelists' discussions today, just plan your strategy, make sure you've thought it through, find the resources. If you don't have the domain expertise, make sure that you're partnering with the correct people. And, quoting Jim Collins, crawl, walk, run is an absolute necessity in getting into an unknown technology that you do not have domain expertise.
Yeah, but
thank you for today. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, no, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Niamh. Thank you, Mike and Gwyn. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we've been able to entertain a little bit and illumine on the issues of AI and big data. And I hope some of you will support or put in some of these applications for the open calls. So thank you, Roberto, for introducing and setting the scene. And thank you to all the AT virtual partners who've been on this call today. So have a great day.